Wow. The T1 terminal at Pudong International Airport looks pretty deserted and quiet, especially on this side. It seems like there aren't many people around. Today is October 31, 2023, and I'm here at Pudong International Airport. There are hardly any people, barely saw a few. Most of the shops are closed, not serving customers. It's kind of lonely here, pretty much the same as my last visit. Even the VIP lounge on the 4th floor is shut, so no chance of grabbing a bite to eat.
As more international companies withdraw from China, the already precarious Chinese economy faces another severe challenge. The departure of foreign enterprises could trigger a series of chain reactions, including rising unemployment rates, supply chain disruptions, and downturns in related industries. The withdrawal of foreign companies from the Chinese market is not merely an economic decision, but also a response to the constantly changing geopolitical and market risks. The divestment of foreign enterprises reveals the deep-seated challenges of China's stringent regulatory environment and political issues. Concerns over increasing regulatory pressures emphasized by the Chinese government, coupled with the uncertainty of political issues, have made the investment environment increasingly risky. Recently, several industry executives and experts have indicated that international pharmaceutical companies are trying to reduce their dependence on China, with Indian drug manufacturers emerging as a better option. For nearly 20 years, mainland China has been an ideal location for the development and manufacturing of new drugs by major international pharmaceutical companies, thanks to the low cost and fast speed of its contract development and manufacturing organization, CDMO services. However, as relations with the Chinese government become increasingly tense, more Western governments are advising companies to reduce their reliance on China. The United States, since the Trump administration, has been gradually recognizing the growing threat from mainland China. The tension between the U.S. and China has been escalating, starting with the trade war. Many global corporations are actively seeking alternative countries for manufacturing. Tommy Erday, global co-head of healthcare investment banking at the U.S. brokerage Jefferies, believes that at this stage, large pharmaceutical companies are unlikely to issue formal RFPs, requests for proposals, to Chinese CDMO companies. For these companies, price is not the most important consideration, but rather reducing dependence on the Chinese market. Glycin Therapeutics, an American biotechnology company, shares Jeffrey's viewpoint. The company's founder, Ashish Nimgaonkar, notes that the Chinese market has lost its initial allure. When issuing RFPs, they now prefer to consider Indian CDMO companies first, rather than prioritizing Chinese companies. 4 Indian CDMO companies, including Syngene, Aragon Life Services, Piramal Pharma Solutions, and Sai Life Sciences, have reported an increase in interest and demand from large multinational and Western pharmaceutical companies for the Indian market this year. Sai Life Sciences stated that although they could not disclose specific financial data, their sales have grown by 25 to 30% in recent years. Other Indian pharmaceutical companies also reported strong profit growth in the last quarter. Some clients are looking to make India their second pharmaceutical manufacturing country outside China, and some have already started moving production lines to India and abandoning China. However, due to relatively lenient regulations in India, Indian CDMO companies still have significant room for growth to ensure their quality standards meet regulations and can compete with China. According to Mordor Intelligence, India's CDMO industry is estimated to generate revenue of about $15.6 billion this year, compared to China's $27.1 billion. However, looking at the long-term trend over the next 5 years, India's average annual growth rate is expected to exceed 11%, while China's is around 9.6%. Piramal Pharma Solutions recently announced that they have received requests from clients to integrate their supply chains into India, with basic raw materials being sourced from India rather than China. While currently about 15% of the company's raw materials come from China, they are actively working to reduce this percentage. The search for new markets and manufacturing bases has become a part of the global economic landscape. The pharmaceutical industry's growing preference for India is not only due to its booming pharmaceutical sector, but also because of its increasingly relaxed regulatory environment, providing more room for companies to grow. This trend is not only evident in the pharmaceutical industry, but is also resonating in other sectors. In recent years, more foreign companies have been withdrawing from China. In the third quarter in China, there was a deficit of $11.8 billion in foreign investment, the first since records began in 1998. This indicates that foreign companies are not reinvesting their profits in China, but are withdrawing funds from the country. In 2022, Swiss industrial machinery manufacturer Oerlikon exited the Chinese market with a deal worth 250 million Swiss francs, $277 million. A spokesperson for the company stated, "Given the current slowdown in growth in China, we believe some strategic adjustments are necessary." Following the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic, companies like Oerlikon have been grappling with the challenges of operating in the world's largest market. At that time, China implemented some of the world's strictest pandemic control policies, including a zero-COVID policy. This policy affected the supply chains of many companies, including Apple, which produces most of its iPhones in China. Consequently, to promote supply chain diversification, Apple moved part of its production to India. This global supply chain adjustment is one of the strategic changes businesses have made in response to the challenges posed by the COVID-19 pandemic. During this turbulent period, companies have adopted flexible measures to ensure the stability and sustainability of their operations. In July 2022, Airbnb announced its official exit from the Chinese market. The San Francisco-based home rental company, popular in overseas markets, entered China in 2016. It is reported that Airbnb facilitated about 25 million stays in China during its operation. However, in the years leading up to its exit from the Chinese market, Airbnb's local business in China, including hosting foreign tourists traveling to China, accounted for only about 1% of its total revenue. For years, Airbnb made multiple attempts to penetrate the Chinese market, but ultimately decided to withdraw. One of the reasons was the intense domestic market competition. As early as 2022, Airbnb faced scrutiny over data security issues in China. To comply with local government regulations, Airbnb stated that it would disclose landlord information to the Chinese government without notifying the landlords. The then chief trust officer and former deputy director of the FBI, Sean Joyce, resigned 6 months into his tenure in protest. However, due to years of unprofitability and the zero-COVID policy during the pandemic, Airbnb ultimately decided to exit the Chinese market. On January 24, 2023, game developer Blizzard announced the closure of its Battle.net servers in China, officially ending its 25-year journey in the Chinese market. Blizzard first entered China in 1997, leaving a profound imprint. In recent years, China's gaming industry has frequently faced policy interventions and various restrictive measures, from regulations limiting children under 14 years of age to no more than 8 hours of gaming per day, to the unpredictable nature of government authority. Chinese gaming companies have been significantly affected. During the 8 months when the Chinese government stopped issuing game licenses, over 16,000 gaming companies in mainland China faced the prospect of closure. This has made the operating environment for foreign businesses in China become increasingly challenging. Take Epic Games, the creator of the highly popular online shooter game Fortnite, as an example. Despite Tencent's support and years of efforts to enter the Chinese market, the endeavor ended in failure, largely due to delayed regulatory approvals that severely restricted its operations. On May 9, 2023, professional networking site LinkedIn, owned by Microsoft, announced the closure of its localized Chinese job-seeking platform, LinkedIn Careers. This marked the end of nearly a decade of operations in the Chinese market. LinkedIn was one of the few Western social media platforms to officially enter China, and its withdrawal signifies the end of Western companies' long-standing efforts to establish a presence in the Chinese market. The departure of LinkedIn from China was not a surprise to industry leaders. Upon entering the Chinese market, LinkedIn initially cooperated with the Chinese government in content censorship, but faced heavy criticism for this approach. However, with the tightening of speech regulations by the Chinese government, LinkedIn's robust social networking features lost their development space in China. Coupled with failed localization efforts, LinkedIn had to make a comprehensive exit due to its inability to compete with local Chinese recruitment platforms. In a letter to employees, CEO Ryan Rolansky cited slowing revenue growth and changes in user activity as reasons for LinkedIn's plan to adjust its global business organization and China strategy, including laying off 716 employees, encompassing engineering and marketing teams in China. This public withdrawal is not new. As early as 2021, LinkedIn indicated its intention to withdraw most of its business from China due to the challenging operating environment. LinkedIn officially entered the Chinese market in 2014, already aware of the challenges faced by Google in 2010 when it left China over a refusal to accept Chinese censorship mechanisms. LinkedIn chose to cooperate with censorship regulations but acknowledged the enormity of the challenge. In September 2014, Rob Schmitz, a journalist for Marketplace in Shanghai, reported that LinkedIn had deleted his post about the 25th anniversary of Tiananmen Square. Another deleted post was by an Australian journalist about Guo Jian being detained and deported for commemorating Tiananmen Square. In response to the deletion of posts, LinkedIn spokesperson Hani Dorzi stated, "We are strongly in support of freedom of expression, but it was clear to us that to create value for our members in China and around the world, we would need to implement the Chinese government's restrictions on content." In March 2021, the New York Times reported that Chinese regulators found sensitive posts on LinkedIn during the 2 sessions in China and criticized LinkedIn executives for failing to control content. Regulators asked LinkedIn to conduct a self-assessment and submit a report to the Cyberspace Administration of China. On March 9th, LinkedIn announced, while complying with local Chinese laws, LinkedIn temporarily suspends new member registrations. In June 2021, Oxford University graduate student Ike Freeman's LinkedIn account was deleted. In an interview with the Wall Street Journal, Freeman stated that LinkedIn did not inform him of the specific reason, but suspected it was due to his resume containing terms like Tiananmen Square Massacre, a topic of his writing. The report also confirmed that at least a dozen users in other countries were banned by LinkedIn for posting content deemed sensitive by the Chinese government. LinkedIn reiterated its explanation of complying with local laws. As more foreign companies withdraw from China, the automotive industry is also facing a downturn. In October 2023, Japan's Mitsubishi Motors decided to stop car production in China and reached a decision at the board meeting to completely exit the Chinese market. Employees of Guangzhou Mitsubishi revealed that over 1,100 employees had signed contracts with the Chinese state-owned enterprise GAC Aeon, officially handing over operations to the Chinese company. This marks the early termination of Mitsubishi Motors' 30-year cooperation plan in the Chinese market, a decade ahead of schedule. Since 2012, Mitsubishi Motors has been producing mainly gasoline-powered cars in China through a joint venture with local manufacturers in southern China. However, with China's rapid transition to electric vehicles, by 2022, its sales volume has fallen to about 1/5 of its peak. Insiders revealed that, unable to gain an advantage in cost competition with local electric vehicle manufacturers, company leaders made the decision to give up. In November 2023, public polling company Gallup announced the closure of its operations in China. This decision was made amidst China's economic downturn and increasing national security pressures. The company plans to withdraw from China, transferring some ongoing projects overseas and canceling others. This move is the latest in a series of departures by well-known foreign companies amid heightened corporate security scrutiny and escalating international geopolitical tensions. Headquartered in Washington, Gallup Consulting Group entered the Chinese market in 1993, establishing offices in Beijing, Shanghai, and Shenzhen, and employing dozens of staff members. These employees, in a consulting capacity, assisted Chinese companies with institutional restructuring and market positioning optimization. Gallup, one of the world's most renowned polling companies, also has a division in China primarily engaged in education and training. However, conducting public opinion polling in China has always been challenging due to strict regulations governing foreign entities conducting surveys. With the decision to completely exit China, Gallup is closing all 3 of its offices on the mainland. It remains unclear if the company will retain any local staff following the office closures and how many might be kept on. Public records indicate that Gallup closed its Guangzhou office in 2014. As China's overall economic growth slows, consulting firms find it increasingly difficult to operate in the country. National security agencies have intensified scrutiny and surveillance of consulting firms, perceiving the sharing of data with foreign companies as a potential threat to national security. Chinese national security personnel have previously raided the offices of American consulting firm Bain & Company, due diligence firm Mintz Group, and industry-leading consultancy Kearney. This year, the Chinese government further revised the counter-espionage law, not only calling for the apprehension of spies by all citizens, but also classifying all documents, data, and articles related to national security and interests as state secrets. Gallup, as a renowned polling company, became a focus of Chinese authorities due to its recent global polls depicting China in an unfavorable light. In March 2023, a Gallup poll conducted among Americans showed that favorable views of China had fallen to a historic low of 15%, drawing attention from China's nationalist-leaning official media, Global Times. The media published an editorial stating that Gallup's polls are tools to contain China and maintain U.S. hegemony.